You're listening to Bloodline Bombshells, where secrets are revealed not through shouting but sometimes with a single ring. This is one of the most jaw-dropping engagement scandals ever to unfold at Northbridge Academy, a school reserved for America's elite. What was meant to be a flawless ceremony was shattered by a girl who thought she was the heroine, but the moment that stunned the entire room wasn't the scandal itself. It was when the girl they dismissed stepped onto the stage and quietly held up the official ownership papers of the school itself. The backdrop, a prestigious academy where bloodlines matter more than GPAs and where appearances often deceive. In that world, the quiet ones aren't weak. They're just waiting for the spotlight to find them. They say Northbridge Academy isn't just a school, it's a kingdom, where reputation matters more than grades, where a handshake can be worth more than a signed contract, where heirs of conglomerate senators and old money families walk the halls as if the marble tiles were carved from their bloodlines. I walked those same halls, but not like them. I was Ella Lancaster, or at least, that's how they knew me. A quiet senior average grades, no scandals, no headlines. A name that slipped past unnoticed, like the last line of a class roster. But what they didn't know was that I bore the Lancaster name in full. Not because of scholarships, not because of luck, but because I belonged to this place in a way most of them could never begin to comprehend. I'm the sole heiress to the oldest financial empire on the East Coast, the silent holder of 37% shares in the very school they all worship. But I was taught a true heiress doesn't need to announce who she is. She only needs to know when to step forward and when to let the room turn to face her. So I chose silence. Until the day a girl named Sierra Martin arrived with a voice sweet as syrup and the eyes of someone who always believed she deserved more than others. I first met Sierra on a Monday morning just as autumn tiptoed across campus. She accidentally bumped into Julian right at the main entrance, nearly knocking both of them over. Julian smiled politely, picking up the scattered files. Sierra blushed, murmured a thank you in a voice that chimed like silver bells. I stood just a few steps behind, watching the scene unfold like an audience member who already knew the ending, simply waiting for the curtain to rise. From that day on, Sierra began orbiting Julian with calculated grace. She accidentally spilled water on his shoes, forgot her umbrella during a cold rain, and, once, fainted in the courtyard precisely as Julian happened to walk by. She told our classmates her roommate was cold and distant, incapable of basic friendliness. The roommate, sat just a few seats away. Julian kept his distance, polite, respectful, but never indulgent. I knew he saw what was happening, but we both stayed silent, because something greater than personal feelings was at stake. Our engagement, arranged by both our families, was to be formally announced at the upcoming Academy Gala. A celebration disguised as tradition, but in truth, a debut for the heirs. I wasn't afraid of being stolen from. What I feared was that the honor of our two families might be tainted by something as cheap as manipulation. I began to realize things were no longer just harmless little tricks. Sierra wasn't just lingering around Julian in class, she had started planting seeds of possibility in other people's minds. She posted a photo of a pair of men's shoes next to her feet, with a caption, "He said I look best in gray, so I chose these." Another time, a blurry image appeared on her story, just a silhouette with dark hair vaguely resembling Julian. The caption read, "It's not official, but it feels like everything." The rumors started quietly, like water dripping from a loose tap. But soon they pooled at my feet. I heard the whispers trailing me in the hallway. "Ella, she's always alone. It must be awkward seeing your roommate get close to Julian. Maybe. She's jealous but too proud to admit it." I didn't correct them. I didn't need to. But silence to some sounded like admission. And just like that, I found myself quietly edged out of familiar conversations. The lunch table that once held three now had just me, and an empty chair. How ironic, I thought, to hold part ownership of the very school I was now being pushed to the margins of. Julian noticed. Once, when I declined his offer to walk together to our advanced math class, he stopped and asked gently, "Are you afraid of what they'll say?" I shook my head. No. I just don't want the Lancaster name dragged through speculation not before the engagement is official. We stayed silent. Not out of fear, but because we both understood something few in Northbridge did. One wrong word could cost a family its reputation, and so I endured. I waited for the lights to come on at the right moment. I waited for the ring to return to its rightful place in front of everyone who ever mistook me for a shadow. That day, I walked into the lecture hall as usual, not knowing I was about to become the main character in a performance scripted long before I arrived. It was group presentation day in our mass communications class, the topic media influence and public perception in modern relationships, a broad theme easy to manipulate if the speaker had an agenda. Sierra's group was up first. She stepped onto the stage in a soft cream dress, her hair loose, her makeup carefully undone to look effortless. She began with stories of celebrities who fell for the wrong people, then smoothly transitioned into outsiders interfering in other people's love stories. Then came the next slide. A blurred photo appeared on the projector. A tall boy with Julian's build walking beside a girl wearing a baseball cap, her face turned away, leaning in as if to whisper something. The room shifted. Sierra didn't name anyone, but in a class already steeped in rumors, no one needed clarity. She smiled gently, her voice sugar-sweet as she added, "The problem isn't love. The problem is when the third party refuses to let go and turns affection into drama." Silence. And then dozens of eyes turned toward me. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I just sat there, back straight, hands folded. My anger wasn't loud. It was cold. I knew that any word I said now would be twisted before it reached anyone's ears. That evening, I found Julian in the back courtyard where the maple trees shed gold and silence. We'd spent countless autumns there as teenagers before reputations and expectations came between us. He stood the moment he saw me. I heard he said, "I'm sorry I didn't shut it down sooner." I shook my head. "I don't need you to shield me from words, Julian. I need my family's name to stay clear of this mess." I sat beside him, meeting his eyes. "Let's postpone the engagement announcement." He stared at me for a long moment. "Because of her, you think they'll believe Sierra?" "No," I said. "I'm afraid they'll think I had to fight to reclaim what's already mine. I don't need to win. I just refuse to lose myself." A breeze stirred the leaves at our feet. I looked down, then back at him. Julian took my hand gently. "I used to think standing next to you was enough. But if silence is your choice, I'll wait. I've come to realize something about people like you. You're never truly silent. You're just waiting for the moment when all eyes turn and the truth walks in." I smiled. Not because I felt better, but because I understood this step back wasn't surrender. It was preparation. That year's Northbridge Academy Gala was grander than usual. To the public, it was just a celebration of academic excellence. But for those in the know, it was the discreet announcement of my engagement to Julian. No flashing headlines, no cameras, just a quiet reveal tucked into the evening program, as old families have always preferred understated but undeniable. I wore a deep navy gown, the same color my mother once called the shade of dignity. Julian walked beside me, his hand resting gently at my back, just enough for the room to understand who I was that night. The evening passed in a soft blur of music and muted applause, and then the moment arrived. Julian reached into his coat and took out a small black velvet box. No grand speech, just a look and a whisper, meant for me alone. "It's time." I held out my hand, The Lancaster heirloom ring passed down through 3 generations slid onto my finger. The room rose in applause. The lights warmed my face. And for the first time, I no longer had to bow my head for anything. I thought that was the end. A perfect one. But the next morning, everything collapsed. The moment I entered the lecture hall, every eye turned toward me, not with admiration, but with pity. A student slipped me their phone. A post was already open on the Academy's anonymous forum, exposed Julian Kingswell, proposed to Sierra Martin before Ella below it. A photo of Sierra, wearing my ring, that same classic gold band with the deep sapphire center. And her caption read, "He told me last night, just stay quiet and it'll all be fine. But I can't stay quiet anymore. Love shouldn't be hidden." The campus exploded. Half the students believed I was the intruder. The other half thought Julian had cheated. No one knew what to believe anymore. I could barely breathe when I sat in the boardroom later that day. The professors looked at me with quiet discomfort. I slid the ring from my finger and placed it on the table like an artifact that no longer held power. Julian found me in the courtyard. I swear I didn't know. She snuck into the dorm. "I've never given that ring to anyone but you." I didn't respond. Not because I doubted him, but because I knew. Sometimes one well-timed lie is enough to turn a heiress into a headline. So I walked away. I didn't cry, but something inside me went cold as if autumn had stopped shining, and a new, unfamiliar season was just beginning. For 3 days after Sierra's stunt, I vanished. No posts, no statements. I didn't go to class. I didn't appear on campus. And that made them think I had lost. I read the anonymous comments. Guess Miss Lancaster couldn't handle being knocked off her throne. Even rich girls have breaking points, huh? Money name connections, but still couldn't keep her man. I let those words pierce me deliberately, because I needed to feel the wound, to remember this. Heirs don't act out of anger. They act to set precedent. On the 4th day, an email was sent to every member of the Northbridge Academy Board Ethics Committee and Internal Media Oversight Council. Sender E. Lancaster, alegacyholdings.com. Subject: request for internal investigation, identity fraud, theft, and defamation. Attached 6 pieces of evidence. 1. Hallway surveillance showing Sierra in a white hoodie using a fake student ID to enter Julian's dorm the night before the engagement. 2. Interior footage of Sierra rummaging through his drawer, taking a small velvet box and leaving within 5 minutes. 3. Audio confirmation from a security guard identifying Sierra exiting the boys' dorm at 2:17 a.m. 4. A signed freelance contract with a digital editor Sierra had asked for, lighting that matches the gala room, and "make the ring pop deep in the gold." 5. Messages between Sierra and a burner account strategizing how to drop the post during peak hours for maximum impact. 6. A receipt from a jeweler's studio where Sierra had the ring professionally photographed. I didn't attend the emergency disciplinary meeting. Instead, the Lancaster family's legal representative, Mr. Howes, appeared in my place. Anyone who had ever sat across from him in a negotiation knew one thing: he doesn't argue. He concludes, Sierra was placed on immediate suspension. Her social media was deactivated. The infamous post deleted. But to me, that wasn't enough. I didn't want an apology. I wanted a new standard for what dignity meant and how it would be protected moving forward. On Saturday afternoon, I returned to campus for the first time. No silk gown, no designer jewelry, just a white shirt, black trousers, and my hair tied back. I didn't walk in like a girl reclaiming justice. I walked in like an investor checking on her property. I placed a folder on the headmaster's desk. Proposal, Honor Code Amendment, regarding personal image rights and impersonation in digital spaces. And then I said clearly, I'm not here to restore my name. I'm here to make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else again. Because honor is not something you apologize for. It's something you protect from the beginning. Silence. Then heads nodded. They understood. I didn't need them to take down forum posts. I needed them to understand one thing: scandals may be stirred up by liars, but their consequences are shaped by those who hold the equity. That evening, Julian called. I watched the screen flash. 8 rings. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, but because I needed space to restore more than just trust. To restore how I would step forward from here. I didn't need to be defended. I needed to be recognized for who I had always been. 1 week after the disciplinary hearing, Northbridge Academy held its annual Excellence Awards ceremony. Officially, it was a celebration of achievement. But everyone in the Grand Hall knew today was more than that. It was my return. And for many, it was the moment to quietly choose sides again. The main hall was dressed in silver and deep blue, the Academy's heritage colors. I arrived on time. Not early, not late. Just enough to say I don't need an entrance. My presence is the statement. Julian sat in the front row. When our eyes met, his gaze held a quiet weight. Not apology, not plea. Just the silent recognition that some things once broken don't return the same. I nodded. Not forgiveness, but an acknowledgement. We weathered the storm, even if we no longer stood side by side. The ceremony began. Name after name called out, applause filling the room. And then mine. Ella Lancaster, Senior School of Economics, recipient of this year's Community Leadership Award. I walked to the stage, speech in hand. But just as I opened my mouth, the main doors swung open. Sierra walked in. Uninvited. Out of dress code. But as always, perfectly timed for attention. She wore white. Not soft, innocent white, but a stark, defiant white, the kind that dares you to question it. She walked straight down the center aisle. The headmaster stood ready to intervene. But Sierra raised her voice into the microphone first. Before she speaks, I have something to say. I won't deny what happened. But I wasn't entirely wrong. I didn't steal a ring. I held on to something that made me feel like I belonged in a story that was never written for someone like me. They call me a liar. But tell me who hasn't made mistakes in the name of love? Her voice cracked, perfectly timed. The room fell into uneasy silence. A few eyes softened. Some nodded as if moved by her fragility. I said nothing. I waited. And when Sierra stepped down, I walked forward, not to confront, not to correct, but to finish what I came to do. I didn't mention her. I didn't defend myself. I simply took a single sheet of paper from my folder, the certificate verifying my 37% ownership of Northbridge Academy. Stamped, signed, sealed by Legacy Holdings and our national bank. I held it up. I'm not here to take anything. I've been here long before someone else decided to rewrite the story. I paused. Then I said, not loudly but clearly, I don't need pity. I just want to remind you, honor doesn't come from public sympathy. It comes from the ability to stay silent, when truth already stands beside you. I bowed my head. There was no applause, only silence. Thick, solid, final. Sierra sat down. Her fingers clenched the hem of her dress, and in that moment, she understood. The truth doesn't need tears to survive. It only needs its time to rise and walk through every lie without blinking. After the ceremony, the Academy's board issued an official notice. Sierra Martin was suspended indefinitely for impersonation, media manipulation, and disrupting the academic environment. No press release, no dramatic statement. Just a quiet line at the bottom of the internal bulletin. For me, that was enough. Sierra's family requested a private meeting with the headmaster, offering an apology on her behalf. I declined. Not out of bitterness, but because some truths once brought into the light no longer need words to settle. A week later, I received the ring back. not from Julian, but from the campus librarian, the appointed custodian of items under investigation. The ring came in a plain wooden box. No scent of cheap perfume. No photo filters masking its shape. Just a gold band, elegant, silent, exactly as it had always been. Julian was waiting in the back courtyard. I walked toward him. No promises, no plans. We looked at each other like two people who had weathered the same storm and now stood beneath its final drizzle. He didn't apologize. I didn't forgive. We just sat together one last time. No titles, no medals, just the truth. And in that stillness, I understood victory isn't about who gets to keep the love. It's about who kept themselves, until the very end. Sometimes the person who hurts you the most is the one who holds nothing at all. They make noise to drown out their emptiness. They write false stories just to feel for a fleeting moment like they were chosen. And then, there's you, the quiet one, the misunderstood one, the one who walks away without needing to defend yourself. You are the one time will side with. Because truth, even when delayed, always finds its way back. I didn't need anyone to declare I was right. I just needed to know that after everything I had kept my calm. That I hadn't lost love because I never needed to fight for it. And more importantly, that I hadn't lost myself. Even while standing in the center of a lie told so many times it almost sounded true.